Today we're going to discuss musical textures. Texture in music is very much like texture in clothing. There's different ways to put string together to make a woven cloth versus a knit cloth. And in that way, musical texture is very similar to that. We put the different musical elements together in different ways to create different musical textures. There are three musical textures that exist in Western art music, and we're going to be discussing those three textures today. There is a fourth texture that is not something that we're going to talk about. It usually exists in music from other cultures, so we're going to focus primarily in the three musical textures that exist in the music we're going to be studying in our class. The first musical texture is called monophonic. Mono means one. And this means we have one melody line. And that is all we have, is one melody line. Row, row, row your boat might be a good example. If I sang, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That is a monophonic texture. I am not doing anything else with that melody. If I sang that and played along with the piano, it would sound like this. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That is still a monophonic texture. Both me and the piano are doing the same thing, so there's only one melody line. If I brought an entire orchestra into the room and we all played the melody line for row, row, row your boat, it would still be a monophonic texture. Monophonic is the simplest texture. The next texture is a little bit more complicated, and it's called polyphonic. Poly means two or more. So this is two or more melody lines. If I use our row, row, row your boat example again, we would be thinking about a main melody line, row, row, row your boat, and then maybe the second part would come in as a round with that, row, row, row your boat. We call that imitative polyphony, when one melody line goes and then another melody line comes after it doing the same or a similar thing. Non-imitative polyphony is when we have one melody line that starts and another melody line that plays something a little bit different, but is still its own melody line. An example for row, row, row your boat would be this. There we had two separate melody lines. And polyphonic texture, you usually feel like the melody lines are competing against each other for your attention. You're not quite sure which is the most important melody line because they usually take turns being the most important, and we'll listen to a couple of examples of that later on. And the next and final musical texture is homophonic. Homophonic is one melody line with a chordal accompaniment. In this case, we have a melody line that's clearly the most important thing, and then underneath that we have chords playing. Now we can have simple block chords or we can have broken up chords. If I use our row, row, row your boat example again, we hear this. In that one I just played simple block chords, but I can break those chords up and it's still a homophonic texture. I played the chord this way. I could also play the chord this way. Or I could play it this way. There's lots of different ways I could play that chord, but that chord is still just a chord supporting an important main melody. The other way you might hear a homophonic texture is if you had a choral group singing. Usually the soprano line is going to be the main melody, and the tenor, alto, and bass are going to be notes supporting that. If you're the alto part, you might feel like you're singing the alto melody, but in reality, what you really are singing is an alto line that is one note in a chord supporting the main melody, which is frequently sung by the sopranos. That's not always true, but that's usually the case. We have a couple of examples of these different musical textures in the activity following this, so you should go through and try to hear what those different examples are and identify whether they're monophonic, homophonic, or polyphonic.